Martin Kelner.
BBC Radio Leeds.
Well, time now for an exciting feature. Now, that's what I call one-on-one. And my guest today is probably best known as businessman and long-suffering husband to Marlene. Yes, I'm talking about Boycie. The Only Fools and Horses star, John Challis, joined me in the studio at the beginning of the year. While he was here in West Yorkshire, starring in the Bradford Alhambra's Panto, which I'm sure a lot of you enjoyed. Well, we'll revive some memories of that. He played the villainous flesh creep in Jack and the Beanstalk. And this is John Challis's one-on-one. John, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Martin.
You've cleared your throat and ready to go.
Yes, I think I am. Yes, I've had a nice cup of tea.
Excellent.
And I'm feeling very good at the moment.
Good, good. You were saying to me just before we went on, that you've actually sat on this side of the desk on Radio 2 and done stuff in the middle.
That's right, yes, some time ago. And I thought, what a wonderful job to have, to sit there and sort of play your music and talk to interesting people and so on. And I've been working at a sound studio in London quite a lot, and we put together a sort of little thing and sent it off the BBC, and much to my surprise they said, yes, when do you want to start? And I went, no idea what I was doing, really, but eventually I did it on a Saturday morning, 4 o'clock till 6.
That one.
I didn't know such a time existed, really. But I was awful to begin with, because as an actor I sort of approached it as my impression of a DJ, I suppose.
I've been doing that for the last 30 odd years. You know.
But you got away with it. How did you manage that?
Amazing, isn't it? But your current project, which you are doing very successfully, and I know that because loads of people around here have been to see the Panto at the Alhambra. You're the villain in Panto, which is not entirely unknown for you. You've done that before.
No, absolutely. I've done all the villains in Panto. I haven't done the Sheriff of Nottingham yet, but yes, I don't know. I'm actually a light comedy actor, really. I'm a very nice person, but for some reason I keep getting cast as these horrible people, and I go around frightening children. So not a very nice. It's a very lonely time of year for me. This,
yes,
because everybody hates me.
Well, I'm told that you're successfully frightening the children because there's lots of he's behind you and lots of booing. I mean, do you enjoy all that? You must do.
I do, yes. It's just quite a sort of cliche phrase, isn't it? He's a pantomime villain. You hear it about footballers and all sorts of things like that. And I suppose I've always enjoyed overacting, really. But it's one of the first things I ever saw when I was a kid, and made me fall in love with the theatre. And I also saw Peter Pan, and I loved Captain Hook, from a very early age, from about six years old. And I said, I want to do that, and so I've been doing it for the last 25 years.
And do you think it's more fun being the villain in the Panto than being, the leading man, or doing well, obviously Billy Pearce is the big star in the Bradford Panto.
Yeah. Well, he thinks he is.
He thinks he is, yeah. doing the comedy, which is more fun.
Well, I suppose I've made my little name through comedy, and I've always loved making people laugh. And I always laughed a lot ever since I was a kid, I suppose. But I just have always enjoyed the villainous. I played Jack the Ripper once, for instance, which I enormously enjoyed. Horrible character, but I played quite a lot. I suppose I've got a bit of a dark side and a bit of a dark old face, and well,
I wouldn't say you've got a dark old face, really. You're a jolly face because you're mustachioed and
as long as I keep smiling. But I remember my mother kept telling me off when I was a kid for frowning, and I was always frowning. I was always a bit of a problem, and I suppose and my eyebrows sort of tend to dive towards the top of my nose as opposed to going the other way. So
you've got slightly bushy eyebrows. I mean, not quite the full Dennis Healey, but
well, thank heavens for that. Anyway,
but approaching Alistair Darling, though, quite bushy eyebrows.
Yes, I keep plucking out the silver bits, you see, so they remain nice and dark. But my hair hasn't gone quite white yet.
No, I see you looking in absolutely brilliant form.
Thank you.
For a man who's been married 4 times, I mean, that must...
And survived.
Survived. I mean, the stress... 4 times married. I couldn't believe that when I read it.
Really? Why not?
Well, just, it just seems a lot. It seems excessive.
Oh, it seems a lot. Oh, I see.
I thought there's a man who likes wedding cake.
Yeah.
You've got a serious addiction to wedding cake. So, sort of go through them in as much as you want to give away. I mean, don't give away everything, but how long are these short-lived marriages? Long?
Yes, well, the first 3 certainly were pretty short. I've written my autobiography, and I sort of started thinking about these things in greater depth than I usually do, and I wondered why, because people keep asking me, why do you keep getting married? Because you're obviously not very good at it. But I being a traditionalist, having been brought up that way, I always thought that's what you had to do. Really, you're supposed to get married, settle down, have a family. So I think that was.
You're an actor.
Yes, I know. But I always thought I was sort of beyond that. But you're right. I mean, acting is not the sort of profession really that's conducive to settling down, because you've got to go where the work is. And particularly as a feckless youth growing up in this profession in the 60s. I mean, this is not easy stuff.
No.
But I got married quite early.
So how old were you when you first got married?
22. When
22. And what were you doing? You've always acted, haven't you? So
yeah.
When you were 22, were you sort of in repertory or?
Yes, I was. I'd just come out of the Royal Shakespeare Company, in fact, and I was starting rep, and I was at Windsor Theatre Royal, and I married the stage manager.
Oh,
and But then I sort of got seduced away from it, really. I just
swinging 60s type thing.
Yes, I got to London, and another agent sort of picked me up, and I started seeing a different part of the world, and I thought I'd made a terrible mistake, and I felt awful about it. But that broke up, sadly, and then I thought, oh well, I've got to sort of think more about it. And I didn't get married again until 1980.
Ah, right.
And by this time I'd been to America, and I sort of got seduced by America. I constantly get seduced by things.
You're seduced all the time, aren't you?
Yes. And in fact,
do think
in danger of being seduced in here.
Indeed,
Particularly if I have another cup of tea.
Yeah. What are you putting in the tea, Sarah? It's do you think of this programme as a therapy session?
Well, it could be. Yes.
Could be.
How much are you charging though?
Well, we'll leave you at just the usual rate. And we'll leave you at the end of Marriage 1.
Yeah.
Because we want to hear your music as well. I know you're looking forward to. And you mentioned the swinging 60s. We'll start with a track by the Beach Boys. Tell me why you've chosen California Girls particularly.
I have two sides to me, really, as far as popular music is concerned. I love the Rolling Stones because they were my band, sort of quite a dirty sort of bluesy band. But I also had this fondness for harmony singing. Mm-hmm. And the Beach Boys, of course, were around at that same time, and I just loved that sound and a lot of the early Beach Boys stuff, and I still play them, and also their latest stuff too, and a great fan of theirs.
That's the Beach Boys, California Girls, first choice of our guest on One on BBC Radio Leeds today, who is John Challis, Boycie, out of Only Fools and Horses, currently in Panto. Martin Walker sends us a tweet here, just to say, being Boycie, that's your Twitter handle, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Was great as the basis probably means the villain, really, in the Panto at the Bradford Alhambra. And,
great, thank you very much.
Hashtagged it, love Pantos. And these absolutely, I mean, the thing about pantomime is enduringly popular. Have you ever tried to explain why Panto is so popular?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot, because I've done a lot of pantomime. It's one of the first things I ever saw as a kid. And made me fall in love with the theatre, really. And also I saw Peter Pan, and my favourite character in that was Captain Hook. And now Peter Pan is a pantomime as well. It's been sort of hijacked by pantomime. But I think it is just pure entertainment. It's the first thing that a lot of children see, and I think it's very important for that reason. And also it has the sort of variety style about it, which is missing these days. I think it's such a great shame. And I grew up in the days of variety, and you go off and you see a show, and you see a juggler, you'd see a singer, you'd see a comic, an adagio act, or you never knew what was coming on next, and it was such a thrill. And I think pantomime really is the only time you can see that sort of thing. For instance, we've got some dancing in it with Lisa Riley and Jake Canuso, and they do a couple of wonderful numbers in it. It's really like a a speciality act that you used to see in.
And for a lot of people, the Panto at Christmas is the only theatre they'll go to. And, without Panto, there'd be a whole generation probably wouldn't develop a taste for the theatre, especially nowadays. With so many
quite. That's why it's important that it's the first thing that children see, I think, because it can certainly introduce me to it. And it's just, as I say, pure entertainment. You get some wonderful songs, some wonderful dancing. Yeah. Great! It looks fantastic, and there's some terrific special effects, and it's very funny as well.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the thing is, to make it satisfying for that audience, you have to work harder to. People make jokes about Panto, and people are very dismissive occasionally of Panto.
Yeah.
But I know lots of people who've been in pantomimes, performed in pantomimes, and you've got to work hard at it.
Oh, sure.
Otherwise, you'll be found out.
That's right. Well, we've got the wonderful Billy Pearce, of course, the Alhambra. And I've worked with him before, about 10 years ago in Wolverhampton, strangely. But I'm just so full of admiration for him. The energy he puts into it, and his connection with the kids, and also the sort of adult side of things as well, which you need that balance in it. And he's just wonderful, and he carries the whole thing, really. And I just come on and say horrible things, really.
Yes.
But you've got to have that side of it.
Absolutely.
As well.
And according to our tweeters and texters, you're doing it very well. Just to continue our therapy session, let's go back to your childhood. Tell me about your childhood. Your mum and dad. Do you have any siblings?
No, I don't. I'm an only child, and it was strange, really, with my parents. It was quite a strict upbringing, I suppose. Looking back on it. Nothing wrong with that, really. But when I was a bit of a, as I say, a bit of a feckless youth, really. And when I wasn't very good academically. I mean, I could have been, but could have done better. Do you know what I mean? And my father was a self-made man. Actually, came from Sheffield. Yeah. Not far from here at all. And he came from a working class family and
self-made in what field? What did he?
Well, he got into the bottom of the civil service and took lots of exams and worked very hard and finished up as one of the secretaries to the Minister of Power in those days, of fuel and energy and all that sort of thing. And he believed he had a terrific work ethic. I, on the other hand, had no work ethic whatsoever. I do as little as possible to try and get away with it.
And was your mum a stay-at-home mum then, or did
no? She was a teacher, my mother, which is where the discipline came from, I suppose.
Yeah. And were you living in London, presumably?
No, Surrey, really, towards the latter part of it. I mean, we started off in London, but no, sort of around Epsom Racecourse. As I say, I came from a very good stable. Yeah. But it's around sort of Epsom, and my mother taught a lot around there, and a very good teacher. But I did no work whatsoever, really.
Yeah. So did you leave school at sort of 15, 16 years old? Or?
No, I was about 17. I mean, I passed a few exams, but not half as many as I should have done.
And then became an estate agent for a little while?
Well, I didn't become one, no. I sort of drifted into it. So because everybody said, you've got to have a safe, steady, secure job. There's everybody wants to be an actor, but it's stupid, you'll be out of work half the time. And I thought, that sounds great. Yeah. I don't want to work too hard. But I was hopeless in a estate agency.
How long did that last? Because you were training to be a proper estate agent.
I mean, it's all 9 months or something. About 9 months. Yeah. Yes. The idea was you sat there and you gained practical experience and you passed exams to qualify. That was the idea. And I just was bored, and I started mucking about, and eventually sort of practically ran away, I suppose, and joined a travelling children's theatre.
Right, yeah, because you always want. I mean, you've written your autobiography, Being Boycie. In fact, it's a two-part autobiography, isn't it? It's the same. The story continues, Being Boycie, and then Boycie and Beyond.
Yes.
So it's both aspects there. And in your autobiography, you say that you quite clearly always wanted to be an actor, and you were one of those guys who was impersonating your school teachers and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my point of interest, really, and also it was. I've found I could make people laugh, and I could be lots and lots of different characters. I just had a natural facility for mimicry, I suppose. Yeah. And so that's the way I was going. And then I grew up with the Goon Show, Peter Sellers and Spike Milligan, and that made me laugh an awful lot. And so that's
Well, tell me about the Travelling Children's Theatre. Were you going right around the country with that? How did you get into it?
Well, I got sacked from a state agency for not paying attention, and then I drove a grocer's van for about 6 months, and danger of dropping out. And I just walked into W.H. Smith's one day, and there was a copy of The Stage, which is the weekly organ of the profession. And in those wonderful far-off days, they actually advertised jobs for actors on the back of a newspaper. Can you believe it? And there it was. The advertisement was a Travelling Children's Theatre, driving preferable but not essential, character actors required. And I thought, well, I can do the voice of an old man, or be an old man. He should do all this sort of thing, you know, or me.
Hey, that's great whistling.
Thank you very much. Yes. I could do it with as well, you know. So I went to see a lady who was very impressed by the fact that I could do all these silly voices and the fact that I passed my driving test, about the only exam I ever passed in my life, really. Right. And so she said, "You start on Monday," or something like that. And I went, okay. So off I went to Birkenhead in Cheshire, and no idea what I was doing, really. But I had 5 or 6 different parts to play in a potted version of Pinocchio. Yeah. And it travelled around it, and we played schools, different town every day, played 2 schools a day, constantly on the move, and I loved it. I just loved being on the road.
Okay, well, we'll pick up your career in legitimate theatre after all that, but we'll play another. More. I'm not that that's illegitimate.
I know. I always love the phrase.
It's great, isn't it? Legitimate theatre. But first of all, another one of your choices of music, White Snake. Here I Go Again.
Oh yeah.
Why White Snake?
It's sort of that sort of dramatic. It's quite dramatic, quite theatrical sort of rock. And David Coverdale, I have to say, I just loved the way he performed and his whole look with that wonderful long sort of blondish hair, and I just thought he was a fantastic performer. And this is his most famous number, I suppose.
That's White Snake, Here I Go Again, the choice of John Challis, who's our guest on One-on-One on BBC Radio Leeds this afternoon. Boycie out of Only Fools and Horses. And if you could give us the potted version here, John, of the road from a travelling children's theatre right the way through to Boycie in Only Fools and Horses. I know it's a long journey.
It is a long journey, yes.
It is a long journey, but do what you can.
Yes, well, I as I say, I love being on the road, and that finished. I guess I did about 6 months in the children's theatre, and then as happens, you finish up in London, and I met someone who introduced me to an agent who was the king of the repertory casting scene in those days, a man called Vincent Shaw. And he had the young chaps like me, and he'd sort of interview you, and you'd do a bit of a reading for him or something, and then he'd sort of judge you, and then he'd farm people like me out to these repertories, you see, and they were very interested in me, really, to begin with, because I could be a stage manager.
Right. But you're acting as well, though.
Oh, yes, but this is the point. I could then go on and hold my own on stage and say a few lines, so they got 2 for the price of 1. Yeah. So they got an actor and a stage manager.
Wasn't that the sort of thing about repertory companies, that you had to really be a jack of all trades?
Yes, that's right. And it was a bonus for any theatre if, as I say, you could walk on the stage and say, "The carriage awaits, my lord," or whatever it is. I was a shocking stage manager, though, because all I wanted to do was be on the stage and say more lines, you see.
Do you mean you must have done every sort of theatre? Because it was, you'd do something for a week and then you'd be rehearsing one play while you're performing another.
That's right. When eventually I stopped being a stage manager and just became an actor, I weekly rep. And, of course, in those days, in the 60s, not that many people had a telly, and so their treat of the week really was to just come to the theatres, see the latest play, and you do a different part every week. And I suppose there was one famous time when I was actually playing Jack the Ripper at night and rehearsing for the Archangel Gabriel during the day. And this way schizophrenia lies. You see,
absolutely.
But I loved it, because I feel I could be anything, this chameleon thing, and it was fascinating to me, that.
And from doing repertory and clearly making a bit of a name and getting your experience and your grounding, did you go from that not directly to the National Theatre? I wouldn't have thought. I don't know.
No. And my agent in London was, as I say, in various and eventually I went up for a little part in a West End show, and this was starring Dorothy Tewton, and it was called Portrait of a Queen, and it was about Queen Victoria, and I had a part as a gentleman of the press, sort of Times thundery sort of speech, one of those, and I was just over the moon. I couldn't believe I was at the Vaudeville Theatre on the Strand in this play. The only trouble was the play was a bit too long, and they cut it, and my part was cut.
Oh dear!
So I spent the rest of the year, a whole year, sort of shifting furniture and understudying, but still, I was in the West End.
Have you had great periods of being out of work, in your acting career?
Not really, no. I've been pretty lucky. In the 70s, I had a bit of a stretch where things weren't going too well.
And you do voiceovers as well?
Yes. So that was the late 70s, sort of 78. That was a big time for it, into the 80s, and I did a lot of voice work there. But I got into the Royal Shakespeare Company in 1966, that was. And after that, of course, television was coming over the horizon. A lot of telly being made, 67, 68, that sort of time. And I was up in Manchester a lot, Granada.
Yeah. Well, you did Z-Cars, didn't you, as well?
I did Z-Cars, yes.
What was your character in Z-Cars?
It was a station sergeant called Sergeant Culshaw.
So you had to do Lancashire for that, did you?
Yes.
Or Scouse-ish, because it was set in...
No, it was a sort of, that's all of those, Mrs. Johnson, So the cat's up a tree again, is it? You got the cat, but your daughter's up a tree. There's a that's my version.
It's a shame we've not got the Z-Cast theme, actually. It was almost like being back there. So you'd have worked with Brian Blessed and all those people.
Yeah, well, yes, I did see the end of that, but it was really the second cast I was more, and I was involved in it for about 2 years on a semi-regular basis.
It was a great series, Z-Cast.
Oh, it's groundbreaking.
But by the time you did it, they weren't doing it live anymore, were they?
No, mercifully.
Live, yeah.
But it was first of the gritty police series, wasn't it? And,
it was.
Because before then I'd done Dixon of Dock Green, which of course was an entirely different sort of police series,
Yeah, well, you'd have had to do Cockney for that, presumably, would you?
That's right, yeah. I was doing a bit of Cockneys and all that, See, I want to flip around here, I'll be anything you want, mate.
It's brilliant. That's why you've never been out of work. It's versatility. The fact that you can be a villain, as you are in the Panto at the Alhambra, you can be the Archangel Gabriel, and if you want them from Lancashire or from London, you can do either.
But I'm rubbish at being a DJ.
But you can't. Well, thank God. Thank God that, for those of us who manage to just about sustain a living in this business, the fewer of you actors that can come in and do it, the happier we are.
Great. Okay, yes. I'll remember that.
Remember that. Next time Radio 2 asks you back, just remind them what you were like the first time round. So we've not quite brought you up to Boycie yet. You've done lots of stuff on the telly, as you say, Z-Cars, and before that Dixon Dock Green. And presumably because you are a character, you could be in lots of these things. I would suspect you might have been in things like Casualty and that sort of thing.
Yes, Casualty and Doctor Who. I did a 6-part Doctor Who
you did, didn't you? Yeah.
With Tom Baker, which was wonderful.
And so tell me when you were first approached about Boycie.
Well, it actually I was in America at the time, and I was doing a couple of Tom Stoppard plays out there, which is a great high point in my life on Broadway and so on. And I near as a touch stayed in America because people were saying all sorts of nice things, but I kept running out of money, and I thought I've got to keep my hand in it, and I came back to do an episode playing another policeman. I played a lot of policemen in a show called Citizen Smith.
Citizen Smith, yeah, remember that one.
Robert Lindsay, written by a man called John Sullivan.
Great writer.
And I just remembered somebody I knew in a pub in the 70s, and I put this spin on this policeman. Particularly this pedantic way of talking, which goes quite well with the policeman, giving evidence in a court, And John Sullivan came out and he said, I really like what you've done with that character. He said, I'm going to try and use it again one day. And I went, oh, thank you very much. I thought no more of it. But a year later, I suddenly got a script saying, would I consider this just one scene in a new comedy series called Only Fools and Horses.
So what year would that be?
That would be 1981.
81, yeah.
And second-hand car salesman this time, but same writer, same producer, director. And I had to change it a bit, obviously, but that's how it started. So just right place, right time, I suppose. Really.
Yeah, I was having a word with Richard, our morning presenter here, who met you backstage at the Alhambra, and he was saying that when you were chatting to him, you were saying in a way it's a double-edged weapon doing something like Boycie and Only Fools and Horses, in that it sort of spoils you for other parts. You know, when you're in something as good and as iconic as that series.
Yeah.
It sort of spoils you for other parts in a way.
Well, yes, it can do. It depends on your character and how you come across, I suppose. But I was completely unprepared for it. I mean, Boycie seemed to sort of hit a chord with everybody, which has really continued to this day. You know, and I think it has closed a lot of doors. That I remember a director I'd worked with a couple of times, who was doing London's Burning, for instance, you know, which I was very keen to be in, particularly as I knew him. And he said, the trouble is that, you know, we can't have this comedy face coming on because it's supposed to be a reality sort of series, you know. Yeah. So, on the other hand, I could go off and do something like Heartbeat, you know, or latterly Last of the Summer Wine, playing completely different characters and be accepted. It just depended on what I missed out on. Really was the big dramatic series, you know, which I quite
you would
like
always be seen as Boycie, wouldn't you?
Yeah. But that's my own fault because it's such a strong character, you know.
And of course, you did it in a spin-off show as well, Green Grass.
Yes, I did. Yes, that's right. That's an amazing thing to have happened. Really, also inspired by my move out of London about 17 years ago. Down to Herefordshire.
Right, and you travelled around with your screen wife. Not, you know, and you were married 4 times, but you had a screen wife.
It's lies, I tell you, it's lies. Yes. I wasn't there when it happened. What?
See, Goon's influence coming through there, which you mentioned.
7 watts, you're not very bright. No, sorry, I'll stop.
Brilliant. And you know, lines from the Goons show, which you grew up with, as you say. Yeah. So, but you did do a stage show with Marlene, did you?
Yes, it's one of the lucky things, really, when Sue Holderness came along to play Marlene, and we got on together right away, and we've been chums ever since, really. And that was about 1985, something like that.
And she's your screen wife, so she doesn't count amongst the 4.
Well, she'd like to, of course.
Of course she would.
Make that 5. No, we've done several stage shows together, and God, we've been on cruises together, sort of talking about Only Fools and Horses. And,
brilliant. People love it so much.
Partnership.
Yeah. The amazing thing is, if you walk down sort of any high street in Spain when there are people on holiday there, even now there'll be episodes of Only Fools and Horses on these TVs in the bars.
Yes, I know. There was a guy I used to know in a pub in London. I used to go to quite a lot, and he said, I don't get it. He said, I don't get Only Fools and Horses. No, he said, I know a lot of people like it, but I don't get it. He said, I can't bear it. I said, I'm so bored with it. I'm going on holiday. So he went off to India, to Goa. You know, and he came back and I saw him and I said, how was your holiday? He said, I couldn't believe it. He said, I go to Goa all that bloody miles away, and I walk into a bar and Only Fools and Horses on the telly. And not only that, I go out to buy a drink and you walk on the screen. I can't get away from it.
No, well, it's true when you go on these holiday resorts. You're going to tell us now, we mentioned the swinging 60s briefly, which sort of put pay to your first marriage. But you mentioned the swinging 60s. Also, I presume it was during the 60s you met the Beatles.
I did. Oh, yeah, gosh, yes.
Tell us about the Beatles.
That was extraordinary. The Beatles were doing a film called The Magical Mystery Tour, which was out on television. And there was one part that they couldn't cast, who was the sort of courier on the coach that they were on. And the word got around, you know, that they were looking at a lot of people. So the world and his wife was up for it. You can imagine, everybody wanted to do this. And my agent just had a hunch that I might get on with them. So she sent me up to see them, you know, a long list of people. And I walked in, and I thought, I've got to go for this, you know, because, my God, it's not every day you meet these guys right at the height of their fame. And in I walked, and the first thing I noticed was that George Harrison wasn't there. So my first question to them was, I thought there were 4 of you. And Lennon said, no, George is just a cardboard cutout recycled some years ago. You know, so I thought, well, here's a man He's a man. I can understand that humour, so it made me laugh. And we got on to talking about things, and he loved the Goon Show too, you know. So we had that sort of comment. We did voices, and so it's going pretty well. And eventually he said, "Anyway, John," he said, "have you got a favourite Beatles tune?" And I said, it sort of blurted out of my mouth before I was ready for it, and I said, "Actually, I prefer the Rolling Stones." And I went, "What have you done?" It's going so well. Now I've blown it. I've just completely blown it. And eventually he, after a long pause, he said, "Actually, I think you're right. I prefer them sometimes too." And they said, "Do you want to start?" We start next week. We don't know what we're doing. We haven't got a script or anything like that. So I hope you're good at making up words. And I walked out and I got the job with these guys, even though I prefer the Rolling Stones. I mean, to work with them.
So were you in Magical Mystery Tour?
No, I couldn't do it. I was unavailable. It's my first television.
Because it was Victor Spinetti, wasn't it? I think who was the
I think yes. And because I got my first telly in a show called The Newcomers, and the dates clashed, and the BBC, God bless them, wouldn't release me, so I never did it.
And you got the job and didn't do it.
Yeah, can you believe it?
You know, that would see if we have this battle, myself and my senior carer, who is Sarah, and I always want to play the Beatles and talk about the Beatles. If you'd been in Magical Mystery Tour, we wouldn't even mention Boycie. We could have done the whole thing about the Beatles. So anyway, you have chosen a Beatles track.
Yeah, no, I liked them. But they were a bit soft for me. I like the sort of grittier, dirtier sound of the Stones. That's all. It's just a preference thing.
Chosen something which is post Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah, this is lovely. Just a lovely song. I think George Harrison wrote it. I think, didn't he? And,
he did.
It's a gorgeous song.
That's the Beatles from Abbey Road, played by or chosen by the man who was nearly in Magical Mystery Tour, John Challis, Boycie from Only Fools and Horses, and currently in Jack and the Beanstalk at the Alhambra in Bradford, where he's playing Flesh Creep, the Giant's henchman. A lot of whip cracking, I'm told, and a lot of "he's behind you." But a huge success. It's almost legendary, isn't it? The Alhambra pantomime in Bradford.
Yes, it is. I mean, a lot of it's to do with Billy Pearce, obviously, who's a Bradford man, and quite rightly so. I mean, it's just it's a fantastic show. I mean, it's so full of colour and music and laughter, and it's the sort of show I want to sit out there and watch, really. Yeah,
and it's on. I mean, one of the things with Panto is it's sort of difficult after Christmas, when people are sort of out of the panto. I mean, no, there's nothing you can do about it, and I think it happens in all theatres. But it is a long run, the one at the Alhambra. It goes on quite a bit till...
It goes on till, what, 24th of January?
24th of January, yeah. So
they used to go on till Easter, didn't they, in the old days?
That's true. Yeah. And as well as we mentioned that you've been married 4 times, we've dealt with wife number 1. Very briefly, wives number 2 and 3.
I nearly got married in America.
This is when you're on Broadway.
I sort of fall in love every 10 minutes, and that was it. And I thought this was the key to it. I was going to get married out there and get my green card and work on both sides of the Atlantic and become an international movie star. Do you know this sort of thing I'm talking about? Don't you? And it didn't sort of work out. As things very often don't. And as and I started getting more telly in England, and I came back, but there's some bug in me that I wanted to settle down as well. It's sort of like schizophrenic, I suppose. And I met someone doing voiceovers, and she was terrific, a terrific talent, and so on. And got married sort of quite quickly overnight, and everyone's going, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" But we did, and it fell apart, I'm afraid. And I thought, "Oh God, what have I done? Oh God, awful." So this was about 18 months. 18 months. No, 2 or 3 years actually. That marriage, that second one.
Third one?
The third one was that sort of started to break up, the second one, and I went back to America to do my own show, sort of one-man show thing, which is to do with my adventures in South Africa. And I came back and things weren't quite the same, so that all broke up. And of course I met someone else because by this time I was at the National Theatre.
Right.
And I was doing, and I met someone there, and then that went on for a bit, and then I got married again. So obviously there was some bug in me. I needed to be married or something.
Yes.
As I say, it's this sort of traditionalist view. I thought that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, like you said, you're not very good at it. But, people sometimes say...
I got better, though.
You've got better. We'll talk about that in just a sec. But there are people who say, if you're proven to be not very good at it, it should be like your driving licence. When they take your driving licence away, they should take your marriage licence away and say, look,
yes.
you can't do this again. But you did, and it's working out lovely at the moment for your fourth
fantastic,
wife.
yeah.
Yes. Tell me about your current wife.
Well, Carol, I was very lucky, really, because when my third marriage broke up, also my parents had died, also all within about 2 years, and I wasn't feeling very good about myself at all, really. I sort of was blaming myself a lot for all these things, and I was dashing about trying to be the best I could with my mother and my father, who by this time had split up and were in separate parts of the country. So I was dashing between the two, trying to work these things out, feeling guilty about it. It's all my fault, And of course, when you get to that state, in my case, and a lot of people's cases, you repair to the pub, because there's your chums, and right, mate, have another beer, and I was drinking too much. My career was going fine. I was actually working quite well, but me, John Challis, was feeling like hell, really. But I met Carol. Carol was the best friend of a director of a theatre play I was doing. She came to see it, and we met, and we sort of knocked about together for a bit. But I was just feeling so bad about myself. I didn't want a relationship because I didn't want anything else to go wrong. And bless her heart, she hung on for me for about a year, and eventually we went on holiday together, and we got on very well, and I came back and started to live together, and eventually I got married again in 1995, and we've been married ever since, and that's
brilliant.
Thank God.
So you finally did get good at it, as you say. You worked out how it works.
Yes, but I think it's also to do with the fact that if you ever grow up being an actor, I don't think you ever do, actually, but you get to a stage in your life where you just get exhausted.
Well, I should think you were.
But no, you meet someone for the first time, and I don't know why it never occurred to you that you've got so much in common with. And I actually had not that much in common with my first three wives, if I think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's brilliant that you're happy now. And you've got, it's an interesting property that you've got, which is featured on telly, where you're living at the moment. Tell me about that.
Well, this was about 17 years ago. My wife and I had got to a stage where Only Fools and Horses had finished, and it was sort of time to move on. I've always had quite itchy feet, I suppose, and been quite restless, and London had changed so much. I'd lived there for 30, 40 years, and the graffiti had come up the road. They'd turned the main road at the end of my Bijou cul-de-sac into a red route. I couldn't park outside my own house, all these things. And too many planes, including Concorde, going overhead, and I'm going, get me out of here. And so we started looking for somewhere in the country, because we'd both grown up in the country, and sort of it was time to move on. And we couldn't find anywhere for years, for ages, it seemed. And eventually, Jean Boat, remember her from Bread, played Mum Boat, in Bread, rather. I'd done a pantomime with her, and she sent me the details of this place, saying, I hear you're looking, but look at this. And it was this ancient pile of medieval stones in Herefordshire, miles away. We looked at it, and it was fantastic, but it was much too big, much too far away. So we sort of put it to one side. But we were visiting friends in the area. We thought we'd just go and have a look across this ancient pasture. Yeah. And it was the hairs on the backs of the neck stood up, and we thought we'd just got to go and look inside. And we found, unbelievably, that my wife had an ancestral connection to it, which she had no idea about.
Wow.
To do with some stuff on the walls. The previous incumbent was an antiquarian. He had a sort of framed inventory and a coat of arms and a couple of other things. And so we're standing there thinking, we've got to do this. Still too big, still too far away, but we've got to try this. No idea what we were doing, really. I mean, you talk about a doer-upper. It was a pretty bad state. And everyone's going, "You're crazy. What are you doing? You're mad." So, just two of you. But there it was, and we did it, and 17 years later we're still there. Yeah. But the extraordinary thing was, of course, it spawned the spin-off series, The Green Green Grass, because I had my 60th birthday party in... I'm not going to tell you the date. But John Sullivan came to see it, so he came to the party. Yeah. And he saw me completely out of context, welcoming all these, all the local people that we'd met and so on, lots of friends from way back. And this enormous place, and that's how the Green Green Grass happened. So it sort of justified this big jump we'd made.
Brilliant. And we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, with Wife Number 4 and your fine property, and your Panto at the moment, Flesh Creep in Jack and the Beanstalk in Bradford.
Thank you so much.
John, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. John Challis has been our guest. Your final tune, The Bee Gees. Do you want to talk us into this one, Night Fever?
The Bee Gees, oh yes. Well, I've just always loved the Bee Gees. It's one of those sort of slightly guilty pleasures, as I say. I was supposed to be an old rock and roller, but actually I've had this sort of this other side to me. The soft
disco as well.
There's a bit of disco, bit of ABBA, bit of Bee Gees, bit of Beach Boys. So this is another part of that part of me, I suppose. La 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 la.